What is good, all of our listeners and viewers? Welcome to another episode of Games and Groceries. My name is Adam.
And I am Liz.
And we're going across the pond for this episode. That's right, we're on episode 84. We're going to talk about the anticipation of games and how it ruins them with our special guest, Game Till 5 podcast, all the way from British England. Heyo, going across the pond, everybody.
Well, we're not going anywhere. We're still in our apartment.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's we're trapped here, everybody. Call for help. Call the police if you have to. Don't do that. We're fine. We're okay.
You're a little too extra sometimes.
I am extra. I'm extra mayonnaise.
What?
You know that sandwich, and you're just like, ew, this is not what I ordered. I ordered. Liz, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're so weird.
Any other things that's going on in your life that I don't know about? Because we live in the same building and I know everything about your life.
We only live in the same building.
And we talk every day.
Same house.
So there's not much I don't know about.
Yeah. You're my husband. That's how.
Actually, there is a story I didn't tell you yet.
What?
And I'll say it live on the podcast.
Okay.
My name's actually Jeffrey. My name Jeff.
Shut up.
Anyways, but no, seriously, so I, as you all know now, I now work at a diner, and so my uniform is basically a diner version of McDonald's. So like, when you see me, like I have the cap on, I have the shirt on that has the name of the diner, and I look like an employee. And so, but I'm at the host desk, and you know, someone comes in and they're like, "Oh, I'm just here for one." I'm like, "Oh, okay." You know, they're like, "Wow, this place is really nice." I'm like, "Yeah, it's a nice place." And they look at me and they say, "Oh, are you the owner?" What part of me looks like the owner of anything? I don't even look like the owner of a podcast, sir.
What?
Like, you see how I dress.
Not even that, but like I wouldn't automatically think the person who greeted me at the door was the owner of the diner. Like,
yeah, like they thought I was like, "Oh, are you the owner?" Like, yes, I look like this, and I'm the owner.
The only time I thought that the person who seated us at a diner was when it was like this old guy.
Yeah,
that seated us. I was like, "There's no way this guy just works here."
Dang.
And I was right. I mean, he was the owner.
Oh yeah.
So.
But like that's the thing. I'm not trying to say that like I look like trash when I go to work. But I am saying is that I don't look like an owner.
Yeah.
Like, I was just like, thanks, I guess. Cool. But I didn't tell you that story.
No, you didn't. That's
someone mistaked me for the owner. I was like, okay.
Clearly they don't know the owners.
No, I didn't freak out at this guy. I want any listener or viewer to know to think that way. But yeah, I was just like, no, I'm
nope,
not.
That's not me.
No, actually, the way I reacted was like, no. I was like,
no, don't associate me with this.
No, I'm not. I was just like, no, I wish, but no. But yeah, welcome to Games and Groceries, everybody. We don't talk about our work lives as much. We would talk about video games, but now we're going to talk about movies pretty soon. But but let's just get into it. I think it's a good time to just start the podcast already. So before we start, we want to remind everybody to follow us on social media. You can follow us on Twitter at Gaming Groceries, or you can follow us individually. I'm at Ace the Grocer.
And I'm at Journey First.
You can also follow the podcast on Instagram, Games and Groceries, all one word, as well as Facebook. Just, find us on Facebook. We're there. We're on there. Type in Games and Groceries.
We do
Facebook.
Things.
Ooh, look at that. They're on Facebook. And then finally, check out our website, gamesandgroceries.com, where you can listen to all the podcasts on the website. You can just listen to all of them from the website, as well as find out where you can listen to the audio versions of the website, as well as some articles I've written. I did interview the developer behind I Am Jesus Christ, so you can read that. I did write a piece about the future of E3 a while back, so definitely check out that article. And finally, if you're watching us on YouTube, definitely hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you know when all these podcasts come out. They're like, "Oh, Adam, when do the podcasts come out?" Well, first of all, Mondays. Second of all, you don't have to ask me if you hit that notification bell, because then, I don't have to remind you every time, "Hey, man, new episode out, ding, ding, bell." There it is. And if you're listening to us on the audio versions, definitely subscribe to wherever you're listening to us. You can subscribe to us on iTunes. You can subscribe to us. I believe you can subscribe to us on Spotify. Anywhere you listen to us on the audio, definitely hit that subscribe and also review us, rate us with your honest star ratings. So with all that said and done, let's just jump into our first segment.
Movie Minutes.
Movie Minutes is a segment that we talk about the movies that we saw, in the past week, whether it be on Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, or in theaters, so we like to recommend it or we don't recommend it. This week, this is the very first week that we're not talking about a Christmas movie. Woohoo, we're out of the Christmas season.
November.
Yeah. We started the Christmas movie segment a little too early, I will admit.
No such thing.
But this is our first movie that's not a Christmas movie, and excuse me, I burped. But it's very intense and it's very important. We are, of course, talking about the movie that won the Golden Globes Best Director and Best Picture for Drama Movie, 1917.
This is actually set around Christmas.
Yes. Opening thoughts.
It was great.
Yeah.
It was really good. Like I'm so descriptive. It was really good.
Yeah.
But no, it was the way they did the continuous camera.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the art angles, that the artistic angles that they did. They didn't just follow them around, but they took very artistic ways of following them. There were times where I didn't even realize we had spun around to the front of them.
Yeah.
And 2 seconds later I was like, wait a second, when did we get here? How did we get here? But then there were other times that the way they did it, the way they followed them continuously was just so great. There were times where instead of following behind them through a house or a tunnel or something, they went on the outside.
Yeah.
And you just went along the outside of it without seeing them. And it was just so good. The only time I complained about it, and I told Adam about this, was that I am motion sickness. But not only that, but when I'm tired, because I get migraines, I have a lot of eye issues. So we had to sit in the front row because it was sold out.
Yeah.
The only problem I had was that with the continuous shot, when they were walking through trenches and it was all windy, I got a little dizzy because I was I was tired, so my eyes were already pretty sensitive. But other than that, I can get over that. If I sat in the a farther away, I probably would have been fine.
Yeah.
But really, this movie was just phenomenal.
So that brings me to my first note. And you talked about this a little bit, the one shot, continuous shot. And I want to iterate that it is not one take. I think a lot of people would get confused because a lot of people are saying, oh, it's all one shot. It's all
it looks like they did it all in one take. It looks like, all right, let's film the whole movie today.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
But if you pay attention, there are some editorial tricks that it's definitely not one take, but it is all one shot. If you ever played the game God of War, 2018's God of War, where it's all one shot, one scene, that's what we're talking about. Where it's all just one continuous story. There's not a cutaway. And it gives a very visceral experience of what it's like to be a World War I soldier, and not just, the battles, but just to do the simple task of delivering a message. Yeah. That's the point of the movie, is to deliver a message from this battalion to this battalion. And you get to go through how hard of a situation that was because of this continuous shot. You are with them from the time they wake up to the time they go to their mission. Yeah. And it's insane.
They don't even cut to change angles. And that's the thing that I thought was amazing, was that they didn't even cut to when they're talking. Yeah. They don't cut to each face. I mean, they kind of did it so they didn't have to, but at the same time, they didn't have to do that. They didn't cut to do that. And that's just really cool.
So the other thing is that if you go into this movie, by the way, they hold nothing back.
Oh, no.
It's a very intense film. And the phrase I put it when I left the theaters, it is uncomfortably important. It's an uncomfortably important movie to watch because it is such a vital story in history in general, not American history because we follow British soldiers, but it's just a vital movie to watch, a vital story to see. Yeah. And it's just so uncomfortably intense, but in a good way. You really feel the pain of the soldiers that are fighting this battle, that are just not even just fighting a battle, but just to deliver a message.
Yeah.
And it's very visceral. Like it's right in the heartstrings because you were with them from the very start.
And like the things they could live through.
Mm-hmm.
Because like they don't even have the like medical equipment or even sometimes the medical knowledge that we have these days. Like there were some parts I'm like, we would have died if that happened.
Yeah.
Like today.
Yeah.
I was like, that wouldn't have happened to like that. There's no way we would have lived through that today. Like where you look at these things and these guys get hurt, they get up, they
keep going.
Put a towel on it and keep going. They pour some dirty water on it, they're like, we're good.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's not gross. Like to me, like just watching it, it's like, yep, that's what they did. Like that's amazing.
Yeah.
And somehow today we just don't think we'd live if that happened. But you do what you got to do, and they did what they had to do. They went through stuff just to get this message over to those people.
Now, at the end of this movie, you do feel mentally taxed, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's not mentally taxed where you watch the movie Cats and you're just mentally taxed.
Like, what just happened? It's like, wow.
Like, I remember just sitting there and just watching the credits roll, and I was just trying to, come back into the world. Yeah. Because it's so well shot. It's so well. And, by the way, Sam Mendes very much deserved best direction.
Yeah.
He deserved it because the direction of this film, you really feel for these characters. And that's it. Like you feel mentally taxed because you are a part of this story. Yeah. And just the way they wrote it, the way they shot it, the way they directed it, it's outstanding. And that's the other thing. My final point before we get into our final ratings is that you could tell that they had a plan. Mm-hmm. They planned this movie out. Like from point A to point B, there wasn't any kind of stone left unturned. They knew exactly how they would shoot it. They knew exactly where it would go. They knew exactly where it would end. And there is a very clear direction in this movie. Yeah. And I absolutely am astounded for the filmmaking.
And I think these days where we get so many half cared for movies, where movies these days, they're okay. Right. They're not original. This movie was just so different from what we get these days. Mm-hmm. Even as a whole, it was just amazing, but especially compared to the movies we get these days. Yeah. It's amazing. And you could tell he's had this movie on his heart for a while, and it was just executed beautifully. Yeah.
So I want to quickly go over our final ratings. Out of 1 out of 10, what did you give this?
I originally gave it a 9, but after sitting with it and you yelling at me,
I did. You really need to find a new word for yell.
I was exaggerating.
Yeah, I was trying to convince you.
I know.
Like that's the thing. I don't like to yell at people who disagree with me unless it's about are tacos a good food? I will yell at you. Is fettuccine better than spaghetti?
Anyway,
I will yell at you.
Can I finish?
Yes.
So after sitting on it, I gave it a 10. The only reason I had given it a 9 was because I'm very careful about giving 10s. So I had to give a reason for it to be a 9, but I was like, I don't really have a good reason for it to be a 9, so it's a 10.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's I think you only gave it, and that's why I tried to talk to you, is that I think you're only giving it a 9 because of you having motion sickness.
Yeah,
that's the only reason.
That was my first reason. I was like, well, that's a stupid reason.
It's not even just a stupid reason. It's not objective.
Yeah.
I don't want people to think that it's a 9 out of 10 because you might have motion sickness.
Yeah, it's not like it was a movie that made me super dizzy. It was just those scenes for me because I have eye problems.
And I also gave it a 10 out of 10 because, like I said, there's a very clear and cut plan to this movie. There is a clear and cut plan of how they're going to film this. Yeah. And you knew exactly where it was going to go, but at the same time, you didn't know what was going to happen. And the way I felt after leaving this, I haven't felt the way I felt about a war movie since Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
And that says a lot, that this is on the same level as Saving Private Ryan. And that's just insane to me, like the way I felt.
Mm-hmm.
And I cried the very first time I watched Saving Private Ryan. I didn't cry this because I'm emotionally broken right now, but that's okay.
I don't cry at movies. This didn't make me cry, but it made me
emotionally taxed.
Yes, it made me emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I could cry. Like if they took it a little further, I probably would have cried.
Yeah.
But I didn't cry, but it definitely made me feel emotions.
So again, this is 1917. It is in theaters. We definitely recommend you see this movie. It is definitely a theater
worth every penny.
It's a theater experience movie.
Yeah.
Whether or not you're into war movies, I think this is, like I said, it's an uncomfortably important film to see, and they hold nothing back. The dead bodies, it's all there. But, you know, be prepared for that. But I think it's an important story to see. Again, 1917, it's in theaters. It just released on January 10th. So whenever you're listening to this podcast, you know, hopefully it's still in theaters. So,
yeah.
With that said and done, let's just move on to our next segment.
Top 3 Gaming News.
The top 3 gaming news is the gaming news that we saw in the past week, and we like to rank it 3, 2, 1, just to give you a condensed version of what's going on in the games industry. There's more than what's happened in the past couple weeks. The past couple weeks have, like we said, like it's all been like Christmas themed or, you know, games of the decade. But now, you know, gaming news is picking back up. But, you know, let's get into it with our number 3 gaming news. And that is a new game announced for the Lord of the Rings IP, which is called Lord of the Rings Gollum.
Yeah.
And this was announced for PS5 and Xbox Series X. The logo is super sick.
I really love the logo.
Yeah, I mean, it's tremendous. Now, talking about this a little bit, this came out in an article. Thanks, dog. Doggy just shook and I heard his collar. But that's the thing. This is a Gollum video game. If you watch the films, you know Gollum. Now, I'm not surprised that this game is being announced. It's being made because on the tail end of Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War, the Lord of the Rings IP is on a new rise. Like ever since the movies came out, when Shadow of War came out, boom! Like Lord of the Rings was now back in a new trending.
Yeah.
And now we're being given a new one. Now, I want to read this quote from the article that's all linked down below if you want to check this out. But it says this. It's not just choosing to be Smeagol or Gollum, because for Gollum as an entity, it's not that easy. Each personality is being attacked by each other. Each has to defend himself, said the game designer Martin Wilkes. And you will have maybe 2 or 3 or 4 conflicts per chapter that lead to a final decision point. At this final decision point, it will be harder to pick Smeagol, for example, if you've always fought for the Gollum side before. So to me, it sounds a lot like the game Vampire.
Yeah.
Where you're fighting against your vampire side and human side. Yeah. But it sounds a lot more intense than just that. What do you think about this?
I am excited for it. And I'm not as big of a Lord of the Rings fan. I watched them when they came out when I was younger. I've never played the games, but I've watched the movies when they came out. But I never really got into them as an adult like I have Harry Potter and Star Wars.
Yeah.
But I think this game sounds awesome. It sounds like the kind of games I play where it's like following the story and making decisions, and those decisions are affecting the end of the game. And I'll play it. Like I said, I don't really know much of the Lord of the Rings realm, but I would definitely play it. So I'm kind of excited for it.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. It also says that the description of Gollum will more come from the books than of the movies. Okay. So you're not going to see Andy Serkis's depiction of Gollum. You're going to see more of what the Tolkien books were defining him as. And, you know, you even see in the article about how sometimes he was a giant, sometimes he was small, but like it's more of a depiction from the books rather than from the films. But I'm excited for this.
Yeah.
It's being announced for the PS5, you know, next generation. So we're going to get our hands on it pretty soon.
Yeah.
So speaking of next generation, let's just jump into our number 2 gaming news. And this is a misleading article. The article reads, and a lot of people are saying like, haha, stupid Xbox. But here's what the article reads. Xbox Series X won't launch with exclusive games. Now, what do you think that means?
I think it means Xbox Series X won't launch with exclusive games.
Yeah. Floki, you're being a good boy. I just had to pet him.
Being a good boy.
Had to pet him.
He's so good. He's a little baby.
Anyways, but the Xbox Series X won't launch with exclusive games.
Yeah.
Now, if you read the article, which is, again, linked down below, and I had to have some time to read this, but it actually means that it's not going to launch with, only exclusive games for, like, the actual console.
Okay.
So, now, let me just read this from, our good friend, Matt Booty. Yes, that's his name.
I was going to say, is that his real name? Is that how you pronounce it?
We say it every time on the podcast, and I say its name is Matt Booty, and you say, is that his real name? And I say, yes, that's his real name.
But that's so ridiculous.
Matt Booty has this to say: as our content comes out over the next year, 2 years, all of our games, sort of like PC, will play up and down that family of devices. Booty told MCV. We want to make sure that if someone invests in the Xbox between now and Series X, that they feel that they've made a good investment and that we're committed to them with content. Now, what he's actually saying is that the first-party games won't be exclusive to the Xbox Series X, meaning that he also gave the example of Halo Infinite. Halo Infinite won't be an Xbox Series X exclusive. It will be on Xbox Series X as well as Xbox One. And he also talks about he wants to make the features kind of like the driving points. He wants to make it seem that like you're going to see Halo Infinite on Xbox One, and then you're going to see it on Xbox Series X, and you're going to think, that's the system I want. So that's what he actually means. What do you think about that?
I think it's a good idea to just like have everything be on all the not all the Xbox, but like both Xbox Series X.
Yeah.
And like making it not like, oh, games from here on out are only going to be on this.
Yeah.
It's good. It's a good idea.
And that's the thing. I think it's very consumer friendly.
Yeah.
To say that like, this is what we're doing. Like you can still play the game. You can still kind of, you can have a feel for it. But that's exactly why I bought the Xbox One X, is because I knew the next generation, good job, Adam, will come out soon. And I still want to play the next generation of games still at playable state. Because here's the thing. It says that you're going to be playing Xbox One with Halo Infinite. But really, if you're going to play on the base Xbox One, you're not going to be able to play it. It's only going to be on Xbox One X and Series X.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. Like, even Xbox games right now, if you play them on the Xbox One S, they run like garbage.
Yeah.
So imagine Halo Infinite on the base Xbox One. That's not going to be...
Which will also give Xbox users incentive to buy the new
Well, that's what he's saying.
console. Yeah.
It's very consumer friendly.
Yeah.
Where it's like, listen, if you don't care about graphics, go ahead, just play them on Xbox One X. We're still going to give you the games. You're not going to have to buy it day one to play a Halo Infinite.
Yeah.
But you're going to see it eventually. You're going to come to us eventually.
Yeah. You'll get there.
Exactly. But I think a very consumer friendly move.
Yeah.
Good for you, Xbox.
Good job, guys.
I like that. And then finally, with our number 1 gaming news, Tencent. In fact, while I'm saying this, I'm going to look it up because I said I would. But Tencent has put investments into a certain game company, which is cool. Yeah, a little investment there. But here's where people are losing their minds. Platinum Games. So the title is saying that like Platinum Games has received investments from Tencent. Now, if you don't know what Tencent is, they own pretty much all of gaming. But yeah, let me take a look right here. Who they own Now, when I told you about this, what were your thoughts?
I mean, I think it was very nice of Tencent to give them the money and fund them. But the way they phrase why, I think is kind of funny. They're like, oh, to give them the freedom to help them do their thing without having others over their head controlling their money. But at the same time, they've given them money and therefore have the right. They might not exercise their right in giving them, like, having some sort of control over their games, but they still have that right to have a say in the games that they put out.
So looking over, this is from PC Gamer. I'm just looking up like how many they own. And okay, so this is how many games they've invested in. They've invested in Riot Games, which is League of Legends, Epic Games, we all know them, Epic Games, Bluehole, which is Black Ops, Battlegrounds. Ubisoft, they've invested in Ubisoft, Activision Blizzard, Grinding Gear, Path of Exile. But yeah, they've invested in a lot. Discord. Wait, what? They funded Discord? What? Discord has received $158 million in funding last year, including the undisclosed amount from Tencent. I did not know that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Tencent owns a lot. They put a lot
you have to look that it does. It's not like they own huge percents.
No, but they still have their hand in it.
Yeah, they have investments in it. And if you're looking at the business world, they're shareholders. And if you hold enough shares, you do get a say in these companies.
Yeah.
And considering the amount of money that they gave, you know, they have a say. And even, like I said, even if they don't exercise that right, technically they're still under, you know, they're not 100% free.
Now, I want to go into the statement that Platinum Games gave after they received funding from Tencent. And it says, going on, the company states, we hope to use this capital to strengthen our foundation as a business and expand from game development into exploring self-publishing. So they want to become more indie. We also hope that this partnership can give us a wider global perspective while still creating high-quality games that stay true to our name. And the article that I've linked down below say like, oh, in translation, money please.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, the way Platinum says, like, exploring self-publishing, wider global perspective. Technically, this is still kind of like an indie move because indie games still need, guess what? They still need funding.
Everyone needs
funding. Funding indie games is a thing. Wow. But like, here's the thing. Like, I understand why people are very cautious about this because it is Tencent. It is. Like, they own a lot. They own Riot Games and Epic Games. They have their hand in them. But I think Platinum Games is what they're trying to do is trying to steer away from Square Enix and try to steer away from like relying on a certain publisher.
Yeah.
And just saying like, because that's what it is. It's not, Tencent isn't going to be publishing their game. They're funding their game. They're pretty much an investor into Platinum Games so that they become more indie. And I can understand that. I can understand that coming from Platinum Games, that they want to explore new options so that they can be more free with their art.
Yeah.
But I also understand from the fans saying like they're very cautious because it's Tencent, you know. I think Tencent also owns Supercell Games, which is Clash of Clans. So I understand both sides here, is what I'm trying to say. I am fence sitting for once. But that's just it. Is that like, I get it. I get what Platinum's trying to do. But from Tencent, that's what worries people.
Yeah.
But all in all, I think this is a good move for Platinum. I think we're going to see a lot more, you know, games that we actually love, especially coming off the tail end of Astral Chain, which was snuffed for Game of the Year nomination. But that's the thing, like a lot of people loved Astral Chain. Now think about how they're being funded by the biggest gaming corporation out there. Think about games like Astral Chain, but even bigger, more funded.
Yeah.
That's going to be crazy. So I think on this, time will tell what's going to happen to Platinum Games, but it is what it is. I think this is a good move by them. I am a little concerned. It is Tencent, but it is what it is. You know, let Platinum Games do what Platinum Games does. But I think they're on a good, you know, time right now. So, anything else?
No, I think we covered it.
Cool. I think this is a good time to introduce our guests. Again, we're interviewing Game Till 5 podcast. They're right over the pond, right over there. They're over in England, and we're going to be talking about anticipation with games. But first, we want to get to know them a little bit better in this interview section. So I think it's a good time to do that with our next segment.
It's interview time.
All right, everybody, we're back with our special guests today. They're right across the pond from where we are. Let's introduce them. Who are we speaking to right now?
You are speaking to Steph and the other one.
The other one?
Nikki as well. Me.
Yeah. And you do a podcast called Game Till 5 Podcast. What's that all about?
We do. That one is me and Nikki each week do our top fives on various video game topics. Is that a fair estimate, Nikki?
Yes, yeah. Basically, we just make lists and then we talk about the lists. And it's pretty fun. Yeah, we come up with quite a big range of topics from literally anything. And yeah, we just do that. It's pretty fun.
Yeah. And I like your take on it too. It's not just a podcast of just like, oh, this is what I like, but the vibe you two give for each other. Plus, I always say this to Liz when I first introduced it to Liz. I'm like, it's also their accents are very calming. It's very nice.
Thank you.
But it's also what's the sound effect when you two have the same ranking? The beetle.
Yeah, Beatles noise.
Yeah, the Beatles noise. So if you have something in your ranking that the other person has, you'll have this sound like, oh.
That's a very good Beatles impression.
Yeah, it was very good. He's very popular. A lot of people like him.
But I think it's a very unique take into just the ranking system, and I think you do a very outstanding job with what you do on the podcast. But for those who don't know about Game Till 5 podcast, we have some interview questions for you guys, just for our audience to get to know you a little bit better. Steph, first, let's talk to you. Steph on Discord is a bird, so I'm talking to a bird right now. Canary, to be more specifically. But Steph, as someone who is designing UI systems in the past, are you currently still designing UIs?
Yes, that is my current job.
Yeah. And I want to ask you, as someone who designs user interfaces, good job, Adam. User interfaces. When you boot up a game or an app, what is your biggest pet peeve when it comes to bad UI design?
So this is a really difficult question, not to get like really specific on one game. So I was trying my best to think. I think for me, in terms of UI rather than like user experience kind of stuff, because I hate a mini map, but that is a long discussion and a rant essentially. So for UI specifically, tends to be more things like accessibility stuff. So when there's a massive trend at the moment where everybody's font is tiny on your TV. Because I have a laptop, like a gaming laptop that I play on sometimes. Yeah. And I think the majority of stuff I play tends to be on my TV. So it's at least, a couple foot from me. And the font on everything is just so tiny. I just can't read anything. And I'm like, I'm not an old lady with terrible vision. I can see things sometimes. So yeah, I'm like, I know it's not just me. And I think there's quite a big movement of people that also kind of are struggling to see things. So just either make it a little bit bigger or give me some kind of like setting that turns it up a bit or something. I think that's the big thing for me at the moment.
Yeah. And I totally agree with that. It's not even just about where all the apps are. I think I agree. I know I agree with you. It's that just the tiny text when you're sitting back or you're on your Switch when it has a tiny screen already. Like you said, it's not like you're an old lady. I think we're about the same age. But yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah. But good answer. I think we all agree with that.
Okay, so Nikki, as a cosplayer, what do some people misunderstand about the cosplay community? Like, have you ever encountered judgment about your hobby or anything like that?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, it happens a lot. Not necessarily like within the community. It tends to be everyone else. And I think one of like the main things is kind of judgments on like age. I think everyone kind of assumes that it's something that, you know, kids do and like younger generation do. And, you know, you can be too old for cosplay and everything like that. And I think that's probably one of the biggest judgmental things that I've gotten. And a lot of people have come straight out to me and said like, hey, you're too old to be doing it. I think it's just like a kind of silent judgment I tend to get. But the thing is, I've noticed a lot is like so many older cosplayers, and like we've been to a few conventions actually. And I remember one of my favorite moments when me and Steph were at a Comic-Con was when we saw like these, I think probably about 50, 60-year-old guys at a pub just down the road, all sat in like full Trekkie, like Star Trek uniforms, just having a beer.
Nice.
And it kind of reminded me that literally this has been going on for such a long time. And it's just not the younger generation that does it. Like they've been doing it like before most of us were even born, probably. And so, yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest judgments. But hey, it's for everyone. So
yeah, true that. Like that's interesting. I don't think I've ever seen. I mean, I'm not big on the cosplay community. I mean, to be honest with you, but I think I've seen more like the top age I've ever seen was probably 35.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'm passing any judgment. But now I'm actually thinking about it. I don't think I've seen anybody past the age of 35.
I think the oldest guy I saw was this amazing guy who was dressed as John Hammond from Jurassic Park.
Nice.
And he looked identical, and he was just my hero. He was probably about 70 maybe, I don't know, but it was incredible. But I think it just shows you that kind of like the nerd culture, like the geek community, like just it goes beyond age, really. I mean, you can be a nerd however old you are, and if you want to express it in that way, then people do, and I think that's awesome. So, you know, it's just, I think it's just one of those things. It's just people are always going to kind of assume, but yeah.
No, I agree with that. I mean, I think it even goes into video games, you know, like, oh, once you reach a certain age, you should stop. But it's just like, as long as you're not, you know, murdering people, I think you're fine. You know?
Of course. Like, yeah, don't do that.
I feel
don't like make a real sword and go and do shit like that. That wouldn't be great. Also, I just realized, can I swear on your podcast? Because I just did it and I'm sorry.
I'll have to ban you, Miss.
Can you bleep me?
No, I always say, and this is like kind of pulling back the curtain with some of our audience here. I always tell our guests, you know, like we are a clean podcast. That's just our MO. But it's not like if you curse on the podcast, we're going to be like 3, 2, 1, you're out. It's just more of just like, you know, be mindful. And that's all we ask.
I try my hardest, but I can't help it. I have like a potty mouth. But
that's okay. I try my hardest too.
Yeah.
Feel free to bleep me. I'm happy to be bleeped.
No, I'm not about that. Like we can, and like that goes into like my own philosophy is just like I can control my actions.
Yeah.
Like, and that's it. Like if somebody, well, like I said, it's kind of like a flawed mentality. Like, oh, I can't control you, but I will control you a little bit. Just like be mindful of your controls.
Yeah. I was telling myself, I was trying so hard. I was like, don't do it. Like, I know that it's not like a sweary podcast, but then it's hard.
That's okay.
That's the thing. We're not going to be like 3, 2, 1. Like Steph, you're out. It's only Nikki. No, you're fine. You're totally fine.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned before, you two are. I want to say you're British. If I'm correct, English or British, something in the middle.
Either's fine.
Both.
Yeah. And you also are into video games. A lot of video games. You rank them. And I want to ask you, as people of the British kind, and also video games, do you think there's a game that exists right now that depicts England quite perfectly, in your opinion?
Well, I think there's not many, if I'm honest.
No.
And go on, Steph.
No, I was going to say, I think out of the ones off the top of my head, and it's not obviously because it's Pokemon, but the new Pokemon does a pretty good job of like making a weird fictitious version of like each city in England. They did an okay job at getting, I don't know, the feel, I guess, of each city, right? Because every town you visit in that game seems to feel a little bit like one that you know of. I can't remember the name of it, but there's one that I read an article on that was like based on a place called Bath over here, and it was very similar. Some of the buildings were like obviously very exact, and the place has a spa, like a hot spring kind of thing in it, and it was in the game as well. So I think that was pretty close, but I don't know. That was the only one I could think of. How about you, Nikki?
I think that there's not many at all, but one that does come to mind, which I played the other day, which made me realize that there's not very many games set in England at all, is Untitled Goose Game.
Yay, bonus points.
Because like there's just not many that actually depict it accurately. But when I played that, I was like, wow, this is just so like similar. I mean, it's like farmland, it's like English rural farmland interpretation, but I guess it's made by English developers, right? I think that's correct.
No, they're Australian.
Australian,
okay.
Really?
But I mean, I'm pretty sure they're Australian. But that has happened to us. We have been chased by a goose in a small village in England.
Wait, is that for real?
Story that happened. Yeah, like seriously. There was a goose who lived in a village close to where we used to live in a place called the New Forest, and there was this very evil goose who would lure you in and into this field where there were like other creatures and stuff that you could go and see, like some deer and stuff.
Yeah.
And then as you turned to leave the field, he would appear and like really hiss and like flap at you and like do all the goose things.
Terrifying.
It was like the worst goose in the world, and you had to try and like get around him to get back out the game.
The game is really accurate. You may not have thought so, but it's more real than you think.
We have experience with geese.
And another game I'd mention, which is kind of similar on the same level of Untitled Goose Game in regards to the fact that it's kind of like in farm rural area, which is, I don't know if you guys have played it, but Everybody's Gone to the Rapture.
I played like a little bit of it. I didn't play a lot of it.
It's quite accurate if you're like, because it's set in like a Shropshire little village. And when I played that, I thought that was really, really accurate. I mean, it's not like everywhere. They're very far and few between like pristine villages like that. But especially with the accents and like the post boxes and the farmland, I thought that was really on point. I thought that was quite similar.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to play more of that, but I'm glad Untitled Goose Game got into that list. I'm quite pleased.
Made his day.
Made his day. Made my day.
I was gonna say, it's you.
It's a reflection upon myself. So, Liz, why don't you bring us into the fourth question?
Okay.
Yeah.
Since you now live so much closer to each other, how many occasions have you popped into each other's homes unannounced?
Well, she's got locks on the door.
Oh, really? Oh, really?
I've tried.
Mortified.
I'd say we met up a few times. We haven't met up as much as I wanted because I'm sick, so I've been segregated to my house a lot since I've moved.
We've been quite restrained, to be fair.
Yeah.
Dang.
But
now
we plan more time in the future.
Is it more of a walkable distance or like a drivable distance?
Probably drivable, but there is like a walkable train. So
yeah, like 10-minute train or like a 15-minute drive kind of thing. But it's much closer than we were. I mean, I guess like, but in regards to like your country, it's completely different because I see like a 2-hour journey is quite far, whereas I guess you guys like things like that it's a lot, not actually is, because England's tiny.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the ratio from England to America because, like what you said, it's vast. It's pretty far. Even the home state we live in, like, you know, I think it's obvious because I have Eagles stuff everywhere. Pennsylvania, woohoo! It's a long state. It's a very long state. So if I tell somebody like get from one side to the other, like from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh, which is the two main cities in Pennsylvania, what is it? 5 hours, 6 hours?
It's about, I know that from our house, it was about 6 hours to UPitt. So yeah, it's about 6 hours to Philly to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So I think if you drove 6 hours, like the only way you could drive 6 hours is north. If you tried to drive 6 hours like to one side or the other, you would just fall off the side of it. I think you would get pretty close to Scotland, so you pretty much would have done England by that point.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like, so we pretty much live in England right now, but
what?
But I mean, I was telling, back to the question though. Like, I was telling Liz that like you two are very, very close, and it's very evident in the podcast if you listen to it. And so, you know, Liz also has a very best friend,
Yes,
and it would
I
be
do.
like if you're very close to your
I
best friend.
wish I lived that close to Elena. I live 2 hours or an hour and a half from my best friend.
Yeah.
It stinks.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
hate it.
That was,
Yeah, that was what we were
what
like.
we had. Yeah.
Yeah, before it was that's why it was quite good starting the podcast actually, because it didn't feel like we were so far away, which was
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's always good. And like that goes into my final question regarding the podcast. You've now been doing it for just over a year now. I want to say a year and 4 months, just about, maybe.
Very accurate.
Yeah.
He gets a little stalkerish like that.
Well, that's the thing. It's like I want our guests to know that I research them, I study them like a science project,
Like a stalker.
like a stalker, if you will. But you've been doing it for over a year now, and I want to know from you, what are some positive effects regarding the podcast that you have, like whether it be in your life, in your friendship? What have you seen in the positive effects?
Steph, do you want to go first?
Sure. I think the biggest thing for me has been like, because obviously me and Nikki were friends before and very close. So I think the biggest like difference for me for the podcast has been doing stuff like this and meeting people across like the community and stuff of podcasting has been really nice. Not that I
Yeah.
expect it to be horrible, but I don't know. You just don't expect it to be as much of a community, I think.
Mhm.
And getting to do stuff like this, which is really cool, and talking to you all, which is like across the pond and stuff, right? So it's that kind of thing for me.
Dang.
Yeah. I think there's a few things for me as well. Like is on a personal level, when I kind of finished, I suppose it'd be college, I was like in a lot of debt and I had to kind of jump right into an office job that I didn't really like that much. And we started the podcast up around the same kind of time. And to be honest, it really kept me sane. Having this like as a hobby and being able to do this with Steph and talk about video games, which is like such a big passion of mine, was just great for my like mental health, to be honest. And obviously improved our friendship and things like that.
Mhm.
And I think as well, like realizing how much I just like to talk about video games, and also hearing Steph's talk about video games and then being like, I'm going to play that video game, has made me like just want to play video games more as well, to talk about them on the show. It's just been all good, to be honest.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
And especially about like the community of video game podcasts. And I like how we're all kind of like banding together and supporting each other,
Mhm.
liking each other's posts, liking each other's like podcasts. And it's just like a very healthy community, I want to say.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to be isolated. You want others to like support you too. Because when you first start out, there's not a lot of people, but when you have a whole band of teammates together, I guess you could say, it makes makes life easier, I want to say. But,
Yeah.
And I think also it's getting to like listening to everybody's podcast as well. You get a totally different view on games or an opinion about games and stuff like that you probably wouldn't have thought out for yourself. So it's really nice to get that kind of thing as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with my new job right now, like that's the one thing I hate the most, is that I don't have the amount of time I used to, because I used to be whenever I sat at my desk for my youth ministry job, I could have the ability of listening to more podcasts, but now that I'm at a diner, like where I have none of that, there's no desk. I listen to less podcasts, and I'm just like bummed out. Like I want to get to know more of your lives more, and I'm just like, I can't.
Yeah. I've fallen behind so much in my podcast listening.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't listened to a podcast since before we moved.
Yeah.
It's bad.
Yeah. It's tough finding the time. I find that as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely like you guys, I try and catch as much as I can, and like some other podcasts that I follow. But life is hard sometimes when it comes to like even just like gaming and listening to podcasts. It's hard to keep up with it sometimes.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
But all right, I think this is a good time to jump into our talking points. But but thank you for answering the questions very honestly, and I hope the listeners got to know you a little bit better. If you're interested, I'll have their podcast linked down below in the description, whether you're listening to iTunes or wherever, audio version, or you're watching us on YouTube. I'll have it linked down in the podcast or the description down below, their podcast. So definitely check them out. They're called Game Till 5 Podcast, but we're not done just yet, because, we still have to jump into our final segment. every single week on the Games Groceries podcast, we like to do what's called Talkie Time. And we like to talk about certain topics in the game industry, whether it be about female gamers or even game preservation. So you can check out some of our old podcasts for some of those topics. But today we have Game Till 5 podcast, and we want to talk about anticipation in games and how it ultimately kind of hurts the experience of the game. So every single week, I like to define the conversation first. And the first talking point I have is that there are some huge games coming out this year in 2020, and a lot of them have some lofty expectations. And I guess I want to start off with, like, what kind of games are we looking forward to in 2020? So let's start with our guests here. Steph, you want to start first?
Sure. We were just talking about this the other day.
Yeah.
I think the biggest one for me, and the one that I think has some of the biggest hype, is probably Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
This is one where I don't know, I have quite a lot of confidence that it will be good, from knowing like The Witcher and stuff like that. But there are some people who are just really super excited about this. And there's always that worry that they're just going to be a little bit disappointed because they're so excited about it.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about that in a bit, like how you get disappointed. But yeah, Cyberpunk's a huge one that I think we're all excited for. Nikki, what will you say?
I say that the one I'm most looking forward to, but also terrified for, is the Final Fantasy VII remake.
Oh,
because there's so much that could go wrong there.
Yeah.
Only the first episode coming out in 2020.
Yeah.
They're releasing it episodically.
Ugh.
Yeah, I know.
It's getting dripped out.
Yeah, and I think they said, a date that they wanted like the final episode to come out, but it's going to come out years from now, and it's just like by that point, everybody's going to be forgotten about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Versus Life is Strange, which comes out like months after. This is like years. And it's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But before I go into my own, Liz, in 2020, what are you looking forward to?
Trying to remember what's coming out in 2020.
Yeah.
But I know I'm excited for Animal Crossing.
Animal Crossing New Horizons, yeah.
And of course Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
And Ghost of Tsushima looks really good.
It does.
Like,
look really
I'm
good.
really excited for that. I'm really hoping it does not stink.
Yeah. For me
it looks
too.
very cool.
Yeah, I like Ghost of Tsushima. Like, the more we see about Ghost of Tsushima, it's gorgeous looking. It looks absolutely stunning. And that's definitely a game I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
As well as like what you said, Cyberpunk, and also the Final Fantasy VII remake. But for me, Maneater.
Oh, I forgot.
Maneater coming out
So
2020.
excited.
It is Goose Game, but with a shark.
And
Yeah.
like, if
Yeah.
anyone knows anything about you, you used to love like sharks and
Yes.
the ocean. Like, you wanted to be a marine biologist. So
I did.
one of your favorite games of 2019, put in the ocean,
Yes.
is like your dream.
And that's the thing. Like, for those who want a little bit of Adam trivia, I believe I was in the 4th grade or 5th grade. I entered my school's talent competition, and my talent was shark facts. And the audience, yeah, like the audience could ask me any question about sharks, and I will answer it. And it was, and
This game is for you.
this game is for me.
I sang the song from Mulan in the 5th grade for my talent show.
Weak sauce. Give me some shark facts. But yeah, like, and I think it's okay to be excited for games, but now looking into the past a little bit, now we're all excited. And Nikki, I like how you put it. Like, you're excited for it, but you're also scared for it. Like, you're scared about the dripping effect, and I think that goes back into our past even. Games that we were kind of disappointed about, and you know, for me, like, it's pretty obvious. You know, I'll just say the easy answer for me. If you've listened to the podcast since day one, it was Fallout 76.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I was anticipating it. I was hyped for it. I partially started the podcast because of Fallout 76, and it just bombed.
Yeah.
And I was just heartbroken.
Yeah.
You know, were there any games for you that like either one of you that just kind of fell short for you in the past couple years?
I think for me, it has to be exactly the same as you, which is Fallout 76, because I'm such a huge Fallout fan that like I pre-ordered it, like I was really looking forward to it. I kind of ignored all the negative side of things that were coming out before it, but I wish that I didn't, because it was as bad as they said. And yeah, that's got to be one of the biggest hits, I think, for me.
Yeah, like I really think so. And
yeah. But they are adding apparently NPCs this coming year. They're meant to do it, I think, before the year ended, but maybe that will save it a little bit, but who knows. But the hurt is still real.
Anymore.
Just saved by one NPC.
One NPC.
Well, no, more than one. Hopefully there'll be a few at least.
Well, like that's
they have to. Yeah,
that's the dangerous part, is that like I'm very much looking forward to the Wastelanders DLC, and plus it's free, so I don't have to purchase it. But it's just still that anticipation where it's just like, okay, now the game's going to be fixed. And I'm putting all of these lofty expectations onto a DLC to essentially save a full game. And I feel like that's a dangerous point that I'm getting to. And, you know, the more I say it out loud, I'm just like, am I putting too many expectations to just a DLC to save a game?
Yeah, they shouldn't have to do that. It's not. That I think normally with like Fallout games as well, like I've never had to be disappointed before until this one. So I'm a bit like, anything that comes out now, I'm still going to be really suspicious of, because I'm like, are you just going to do it again? You know?
Yeah. Steph, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I mean, although I wasn't on the Fallout 76, it's like that weird feeling of a little bit like, well, I bought this game, so I need to just stick with it and hopefully they'll make it good. But like that's totally the wrong attitude to have. But I know I've done it with stuff like, but I've invested already, so I have to just kind of see it through to the end. And you're just hoping that they're going to have that kind of moment, like things like No Man's Sky have done and stuff, where they've just like rebooted themselves and now it's a good game.
Yeah. No, that just is that, like, it becomes a little and it, like, the more we talk about this, like, I even think about, did you watch the Pokemon Direct at all that came out this past week?
Yeah.
Or I should say, as we're recording this yesterday, I think. Yeah, something like that.
One of the days.
Yeah, one of those days. And like, there's this almost division in the DLC of Pokemon, whether it would save a game or not save a game, or everybody's a little bit mad about it, because part of that DLC, Liz, I don't think you knew about this, but part of it is that they're adding more Pokemon to the game, already existing Pokemon, by the way. And a lot of people are just saying it like, well, why didn't you add that to the first game? And it's kind of like making people angry because they anticipated Pokemon to be like this, you know, on a pedestal. Yeah. You know, and it kind of, you know, divides people almost, and it's just all causing to anticipation and expectations. Yeah. What would you say to that?
I guess for me, it's a little bit weird because it's hard to work out whether it was like always a plan along, and they were always planning to add them, but like at a later date and put in a DLC, or whether because of the kind of almost backlash that they got from not having some of those Pokemon in initially, they've almost felt compelled to add them. So it's hard to work out like when they were planning to do this and how long it's taken them to get there, or how long they're planning for it to take them, if that makes sense. Which I think is a totally different subject altogether. But yeah, it's that weird feeling, I guess, of trying to work out whether that's going to help it or, like you said, cause more controversy for them in the first place.
Yeah. Nikki, do you have any thoughts about this DLC that just came out or is coming out for Pokemon?
See, I'm not as big a like Pokemon fan as Steph, so I haven't actually got it yet. I've recently got my Switch, and I'm gonna get Pokemon soon. But so for me, it doesn't really affect me because I'm like, but it's the DLC, or is it free?
I think it's a paid DLC. It's $30.
That I have a bit more of a problem with, because it reminds me of the whole like Destiny era, where it kind of felt like they removed things from the game just to sell in a DLC, and I do have a bit more of a bigger problem with that kind of thing. But you know, it's a difficult line because obviously they want to make money and they want to sell things. It's a difficult situation. No,
I agree. It's just kind of like, you understand it because it is developers, but it's also it's Pokemon. It's the Pokemon IP, where it's just like it has all the money.
I was gonna say, how much money do they really need?
Yeah, it's like
that's true.
it's all the money. Like it's a pretty high DLC. Or it's a pretty high IP, I should say. So I think going back into what our original conversation is about, which is about anticipation, expectations, and I want to kind of get into the conversation of like what really causes this anticipation, expectation. What causes that in the first place, that we start to make these expectations and just to be disappointed about a game? What do we all think about this?
What causes the anticipation, you said?
Yeah, what causes it?
I think comes out of like excitement and love for a game. Like you're so excited for the game and you see like the trailers and gameplay and you start to think, oh, is that something you can do? And you start like, it comes in through natural conversation. I think when you're just like talking, you're like, oh, doesn't that game look really cool?
Yeah.
Even that movie look really cool. And you're just like, that looks awesome. I bet they're going to do this. Like it just comes naturally. And then when it comes out, you're like, oh, that's not what I thought.
Yeah.
And I think the anticipation just comes from like, it's just natural. Like when you're talking about it and thinking about it comes out of that excitement.
No, I can agree with that.
It just seems to snowball as well. Like you were saying, like you kind of almost as like, we just kind of imagine what this game is going to be in your head. Even sometimes when you have almost no context of what that gameplay is actually going to be, you kind of make up your mind sometimes a little bit about what the mechanics are going to be, what features they're going to have. Like you kind of almost imagine this almost impossible game. So it builds and builds and you're like, oh, it's going to be the best game ever. And then they kind of reveal a bit more and it's not that.
Yeah. I think sometimes as well, like the advertisement can sometimes be misleading and some of like the interviews with like developers and things like that. Sometimes, I mean, I guess No Man's Sky is kind of like an example where he said a lot of things that maybe weren't 100% accurate. And then so people get it in their heads that this is the way this is going to be. It's going to be this, you know, crazy thing. And then when actually it comes out, it's like, oh, actually it's not as, you know, it's maybe not as good as they described. And I guess it's just like that natural hype, I guess, that they want people to buy the game. They want people to be excited. But there's a point where you're like, getting a little bit too much.
And I can agree with that. It gets to be too much and it gets to be too vague. And you pointed out No Man's Sky, and for me, when you say that, I think about Mass Effect Andromeda when that first released, and I was the first person to be like praising the stars. Like anybody that stopped me, like, do you know anything about the game? Like, no, and it doesn't matter because it's Mass Effect and it's going to be perfect. Like, step off me, fight me. And the closer we got to the release date, it felt like they were telling us nothing about the game. And I think it's on both ends where you were saying that like it's too much information, it's too many promises, it's not enough, or it's like it has too many promises that it can't fulfill. Whereas a sign of Mass Effect Andromeda, there weren't any promises. Like it was just kind of like, we're Mass Effect, and that's all you really need to know. And here's some concept art, and that's about it.
I think as well, when it comes to a game that's already in like a series of games like Mass Effect Andromeda, the thing that causes the hype and the anticipation is the fact that there's already games, there's already a threshold that you think that it's going to meet. And so I think sometimes in that regard, previous games can then cause, like say for example, like Last of Us 2 coming out this year. In case it's bad, you know, it almost can't be bad because it's got something before it which was incredible. And so that almost sets this, you know, the threshold of how good it should be. And I think that in itself can sometimes cause it too.
And that just is it. Like I think this level of bad, it's kind of like comes from our, and this is kind of, you know, what sets our expectations. Why do we set this anticipation? Because a lot of people complain about this, but really a lot of people just want it. They'll complain about it like it's just more of the same. But if you really look at the developer's eyes, if you start to make a game and it's different from what you already know, you're going to complain about it anyway. So their developers, I feel like, are in this rock and a hard place where if they stay with more of the same, like you talked about Last of Us 2, if it's just another Last of Us game, it would be like, oh, it's nothing different. It's not revolutionary. It's just the same old. Fine. But if you make it a different game, if different gameplay, people will be like, this isn't what I wanted. This isn't what I expected, because they expected more Last of Us.
I think
Yeah.
I think what developers need to do, and I hate to like say things like I think developers need to do this and
Yeah.
this, because like it is an art and you don't want to like tell someone how to do their art, but at the same time it's like I feel like they need to find a common medium between doing the same and a little different.
Yeah.
Like they need to figure out how to do something different, like because it is a second or a third, like a prequel or sequel. I
Mhm.
mean, has to be different. It's a different story. It's a different part of the story, but it does have to be similar, because if you're gonna do a sequel, it does have to connect, and they do have to be the same. If you want to do something so different, then make a different game.
Right.
Yeah.
That's my opinion, because like that was like our big thing with Life is Strange 2.
Yes.
That was one for me, because you never actually asked me what my disappointment.
Oh,
this
what
year
was your
Thank you.
disappointment of this year was?
So mine was
I ask it now.
Thanks. That
You're
doesn't
welcome.
count.
Love you.
But Life is Strange
Mhm.
2 was such a disappointment, because we were so excited, because we loved Life is Strange 1 and everything that came with it, and it was just wonderful. And then Life is Strange 2, and it wasn't the same. It didn't feel the same. It was weird.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where it's like you got to get that common medium somewhere. You know?
Yeah.
You got to make it a little bit similar when it comes to
Mhm.
some games if you're going to do a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's because that's something that's very similar with like Ni no Kuni and Ni no Kuni 2, where they almost completely changed the gameplay from 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people I spoke to about 2 just really didn't like it. Because of the fact that because it had the name Ni no Kuni 2, they were expecting it to be exactly that. Like it's the same game.
But with a
like
2.
slightly improved, or some changes in there. But really, like it wasn't a bad game. It was just because that name was attached to it.
Yeah.
It kind of just made you automatically think like, hey, this is bad because it's not the same thing. Whereas actually, when you actually sat down and played it, you were like, this is a really good like RPG game. But it's not. You still have that feeling. You're like, but it's not Ni no Kuni. So have I enjoyed this? Like, or is it just? It's that really conflicting thing between, like expecting a sequel to be something that it should be, and then almost getting something that is a good game, but because it's not what again you expected it to be, it's therefore maybe bad. So it's it's a weird balance.
Yeah, it's so difficult. It's so difficult to get like that thin line of the same kind of game but then different and new. It must be so hard for developers to kind of hit that as well. And I think some games have done it very well, but yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people were complaining about Borderlands 3, because when the game was first announced, that the first gameplay of it when that came out, I saw a lot of people just complaining like it's just more of the same. It's just Borderlands 2, but with better and it's not even better graphics, blah blah blah. And it's just like, I'm not a big Borderlands fan myself, but I can appreciate the game. Can I appreciate Randy Pitchford? That's a different conversation. But
Fair enough.
but the game in of itself, it is what it is. It's just a looter shooter, fun with your friends kind of game. And I think that's what the developers wanted. But a lot of people are saying like it's just more of the same. And I think that's where that anticipation comes from, because you have what you would do if you were the game developer when you're not.
Yeah.
And Liz, I like what you said. Like, you don't like saying what developers should do because it is what their art is.
Like that's where their passion lies. Like that's their thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think it can even go into podcasting, right? We're all in the podcasting game here, I believe. And I had this conversation with Good Game Great Game when they were on the show. But when we talked about fan what do you call it? Fan criticisms. What I want to say, fan criticisms versus what fans say like you should be doing. I don't know. It's kind of like this. I don't know what to call it. It's like this fine line between like this is a criticism versus this is like expecting too much out of a game. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things where, and it's not probably the right word, so I apologize for using it already.
Okay.
But it feels kind of almost like an entitled thing that the game, like us as game fans, have kind of become a little bit, where it's like the people who shout loud enough feel like they're getting, you know, what they want. They're kind of almost forcing, you know. Whereas, like you said, like in development, you know, it's one of those things where it's controlled by so many different factors and stuff like that, where it's like, yes, it's an art form and stuff like that. And obviously you want to do stuff for your fans of like game things, but also you've then got, you know, your kind of artist thing, but then you've also got like the other side where it's like the kind of higher up, the people who are, you know, giving the money for the game want a certain thing as well. So that's got to feed into it. So you've got like almost 3 camps trying to make something. And it's just that really, and you can see sometimes how stuff, like I think Mass Effect Andromeda is such a big example of that, where you had so many like big heads just kind of like obviously fighting over what that game should be, to the point where they didn't know what it was going to be until like the last year, 6 months of development, and then they just like cranked out something because they kind of had to at that point. And then you just get this weird kind of mishmash of fan service, but also not. And it's just that weird combination.
And I kind of like I think we talked about this a little bit, but you know, just for conversation's sake, we all as fans, and I like what you said, entitled, because that is what it is. It's you feel like you're entitled to this game that's in your head, that's not necessarily the developer's artistic. Again, we talked about this with Sekiro, with difficulty in games, and saying that like, well, like, listen, it's not necessarily for you. This is not your game, but this is where the developer wants it to go. And there's plenty of the games you can do. I'm currently playing Sekiro right now. Am I being successful in it? Again, another conversation. No, I am not. But that's for another place. But that's the thing. I for conversation's sake, where's the line in between, and I'm going to use your term entitled, not anticipated or expectation, because anticipation and entitlement, I think, are two different things. So what do you think the line is? Like, where do you cross the line when it comes to just fun speculation and discussions and straight up entitled expectations, I want to say? What do we all think about that?
I think, like you're saying, you said the fine line between entitlement and
just a fun conversation, like expectations.
I think it's more in the way that you phrase what you want.
Okay.
So if we go back to like the podcast example, or even we could still use a game example. So if you say to a developer, like, I'm trying to think of just a game to base it off of, but if you're saying to a developer, like, oh, I was really wishing that you would have like this mechanic or something.
Right.
Like say like, oh, I really wish that we could do a backflip when we're doing this move or something.
No,
I don't know. I can't, I'm not good on my toes.
Right.
But instead, more entitled, it would be like, oh, come on. Like, I thought you were going to do this. And, like, this game is terrible because you can't do backflips.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
You see what I mean? Like, I feel like part of it is, like, the tone of what you're saying.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
I think, personally, for me, like, it's a difficult one because I don't tend to look too much into a game before I get it. I know it sounds awful, but like I'll watch a couple of game trailers and I want to hear what it's about. But then when I tend to get the game, I don't have like really high standards. I tend to think, well, it's like when you're a kid. I don't know if you guys are like this, if you ever like played games and stuff, but I often would just find a game that my brother had or something, or just buy a game randomly with like Blockbusters, and I wouldn't know anything about it, and I just put it in and I'd have no expectations, and I'd just be like, let's just see what this is about, and if I like it, cool, and if I don't, whatever. And I just myself just try and not have high expectations, but I often like to look at gameplay demos. I feel like that's a really handy thing, because then I can kind of understand how the game plays and if I want to sort of be into that kind of game. But it's so difficult because it's such a thin line between standards. I definitely have more high standards with like sequels and remakes, but it's a tough one. Yeah,
I think I have more high standards, like what you said, not more for sequels, but remakes. Definitely I have pretty high standards.
Yeah.
Steph, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I really agree with what you said, Liz, and you saying, Nikki. I do exactly the same thing where I try and just gauge what the gameplay is going to be like, and then if I feel like that's going to be something that I'm into, or like not, you kind of just go like, oh, this isn't the game for me. Like,
Yeah.
I think there's a game free on the Epic Store at the moment that looks really cool, looks beautiful, but it's like a really Metroidvania thing, and I'm just not into that kind of game. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it looks awesome, and I will recommend it to people I know, but I know I won't like it. But
Yeah.
that doesn't
Mhm.
mean that I'm gonna sit there and go like, why did you make a Metroidvania game? Like
Yeah.
you said, it's that tone of how you kind of address, and it's like, oh, it would be nice if maybe, you know, you're almost like offering an idea to improve something,
Yeah.
or like you said, talking with your friends and stuff like that. But I think it's just how you are as a person, probably,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
down to it, or just how intensely maybe you like something. But yeah, maybe shouldn't be an angry thing.
No, I
There are some people who just take the video games and everything a little too personal.
yeah.
Yeah, like what would happen with Diablo Immortal kind of thing.
Yeah.
That was a big one where it was that typical like conversation of expectation versus like entitlement. That was a definite clash of those two things, of everyone expected something and it wasn't quite what they were expecting it to be revealed as. And then you almost had the backlash of the entitlement. So I think they almost follow. Like, you kind of start off with this anticipation of what you're kind of excited for a game to be, or what's going to get announced. And then when it's not, you kind of sometimes maybe people can slip into a bit more entitlement feeling, where it's like, why have you not made this game that I wanted in my head? Like, how did you not know that that's what I wanted?
Yeah.
No, I can agree with that. It's more of just it's not what you say, it's how you said it kind of matter. Where it's just like the mentality that you have, it's kind of just that.
Yeah.
I'm even in like kind of like the sports world here, where a lot of people get super aggressive when their team doesn't do what they do. And you know, even more so, you know, going in England standards with football, not soccer.
What was that?
Football is what they call it.
I know. Never mind.
Football?
Football.
You're just saying it weird. You're saying it.
No, I'm saying it like British people do.
No, you're
I
Football.
was doing an impression of you then. Yeah, football.
Football.
that-
Football.
Football.
What? I love you.
I appreciate the attempt. It was good.
But I know for a fact that you know as an Eagles fan, we're pretty aggressive people. But you know, in football in England, there's actually, if I'm correct, there's different entrances for the different fans. There's the entrance for the home team fans, and there's the entrance for the away team fans, because they cannot sit next to each other because they're just that aggressive.
Yeah, so
Wow.
there is the stadium here, they have like a massive rival, and anytime the rival plays here, quite a lot of the time the like supporters for the teams have to be like police escorted. There are like people on horses, there's giant vans like that actually walk them from the stadium to the train station, like in an escorted fashion, because they just cannot be trusted, which is a ridiculous sentence. Like, you're watching a man kick a stupid ball around.
Yeah, and my advice as well is do not get on trains when there's like football match that's going on, because I've had that once before. I got stuck on this train and there was just all these football people and different teams, and it was the most terrifying experience. I mean, it's just, they just get really into it, and it's quite scary.
You can tell we're football fans.
Yeah, and that's just it. It's like, like one of my dreams is to go to an Everton game. Like, I really wanted to go to one. I'm a big Everton fan. Very heartbroken when Lukaku went to Man U, but you know, that's just me. But that's just it. Is that like, I think even sports fans and video game fans alike, they get super personally attacked when their anticipation doesn't happen.
Yeah.
When in all actuality, and this goes into sports and video games, the developers and the players, they don't really have that kind of aggression or that kind of rivalry. In fact, they kind of have like this brotherhood where they're confused why so many people are just super aggressive about what their expectations are. Like my expectation for the Eagles was that they go further into the playoffs. That
did not happen.
That did not happen. But here's the thing, like life goes on for me. I say, oh, that's terrible. Life goes on. But same thing going to video games. I might have an expectation that Maneater is going to be Game of the Year, and that's just how it's going to be. But if it's not exactly how I was picturing Maneater, sure, maybe I put some money into it, but you also put money into sports teams too. You buy tickets, jerseys, all this stuff. So you also buy money into that. But sure, I may have purchased Maneater full price, day one, no patches. Fine. But if it's not as good as I thought it would be, I just kind of move on. Someday it will get better. Patches, fine, maybe.
And you'll always have your shark facts.
I will always have my shark facts, except
no one could take them from you.
Yeah. I maybe can remember an eighth of the knowledge that I had in fourth grade, but I was on fire in fourth grade. I was quite the brilliant child.
Oh,
I'm sure the knowledge is still in there. I'm sure when you play the game, it'll all just come
I'll
out.
come back.
It will all come back, just like, a sense of smell in your memory just comes back like, oh yeah, whale sharks are the largest mammal ever.
Liz, you're going to learn so much about sharks.
I know.
for
It's
now.
going to be great.
Be prepared.
Maneater.
Oh my goodness.
So, closing out our conversation here, I think this is a good way to close out our conversation. Are there any other, kind of closing final thoughts about anticipation in games? What about you, Steph or Nikki? Any final thoughts?
I guess for me, like I know we've talked a lot about our expectations as fans, but there is also like stuff on developers as well. So I think it's both sides. Like we can do a lot to mitigate like how much that helps. Like we can help fans have a better understanding of how their game is going to be perceived, and maybe we need to just kind of learn to accept that if we like it, we like it. If we don't, we don't, I guess.
Yeah. And I think as well, like it's just something in your head to bear in mind that, I think if people do enough research and you look into it enough before getting a game, then you're less likely to be disappointed, hopefully, as long as the developers and everyone's been honest.
Yeah.
But just, to bear in mind, obviously, that everything is a ginormous team effort. So, if you're one of those people that gets really angry, just try and remember that it's lots of different people kind of all at once trying to please everyone. And just my attitude has always just been like, if it sucks, it's fine. I'm sure there'll be another game out there that's really good. So it's fine.
Yeah. No, I can agree with that. Liz, any final thoughts?
I think for me, it's mostly just like I think Nikki said that, like, remember it's a team effort. It's like a whole group of people. Like that's like having like 5 different artists work on one thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's like even more there doing that at times, but like just remembering that. And then I think the only way that like this attitude of like being angry at games, like a game, is just it's something that the only way that's going to change of like our attitude towards games and how they work, it's only going to change once like people change their personalities or change their mindset. Like a whole generation needs to change their mindset to change it.
Yeah.
Like we need to get past this whole thing of like, I want it this way, like that. And I mean, there are times where there's developers who just lie, and that needs to stop too.
Yeah.
Same thing in the
definitely.
movies. Like there have been so many movies in the past year that just put all the exciting parts in the trailer and said, look, it's an exciting movie, and it's not.
Yeah. Except for our past this episode's movie minutes, which was
No, that was amazing. But that's later, or that's earlier. But whatever.
my goodness. But yeah, just kind of closing out this conversation, just like that, like what we all said here is that it's on the part of the marketing team and the developers where, you need to give enough information. It's on part of the consumers too, moving on. But we all just need to get along, people.
Everybody needs to step up.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think it's fine to just, talk about a game, speculate about a game. And like we said before, it's not what you say, it's how you say. It's the mentality behind what you say. And just understanding it, like it's fine to just have fun speculation. Like I have fun speculation about Starfield, which is going to be the best game ever. But and at the same time, it's just there's jokes aside, it's going to be a video game.
Yeah.
I'm going to purchase it. Will I be satisfied with it? Who knows? But if I'm not, then maybe I need to rethink things,
The world's not going to end just because the game isn't what you expected it to be. It just means you won't be playing that game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's just it. And I will sell it on the black market for a profit.
No.
No? No, I will not.
No.
Dark web?
No.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'll sell it somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the store.
Oh, yeah, true. I can do that. Not the black market.
I like that you went straight there, though.
Yeah, straight to the black market. You guys have Amazon, you have eBay. Black market for me. That's my spot. But
You're right.
yeah. All right, so I think we can close things out. Nikki and Steph, I want to roll out the red carpet for you. Where can we find you on social media?
Nikki, this is your job.
Oh, it's my time to shine. So we're at Game Till 5 on Twitter and on Instagram. And if you want to just generally listen to our podcast, you can find us anywhere, any podcast place at Game Till 5.
Yeah. And where can we follow you, Nikki, on social media?
So I am at Elite Cat with 2 E's on Twitter and Instagram.
Mm-hmm. And Steph the Bird, where can we find you flying about, tweeting about?
Very rarely, but if you do, I think it's like Sephi with 3 F's.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mostly hide in the shadows.
Yeah. I think we all do.
In the tree. There we go.
Yeah, in the tree. But yeah, definitely follow them on social media. Like definitely, like I've said at least 5 times on this podcast. Definitely check out their podcast. As I said before, it's a very unique take to the ranking. It's very refreshing. You can tell that they're very close friendships, and just the Beatle sound when they go "ow," like it's very fun to listen to. So I highly recommend you check them out. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, I listen to them on Spotify. You can also listen to them on iTunes, but definitely go find Game Till 5, link down below. All right, with all that said and done, of course, you can follow us on social media at Gaming Groceries on Twitter, Games Groceries, all one word, on Instagram. Find us on Facebook, just stalk us there. And, with all that said and done, we thank you for listening to this week's episode. We hope you have a safe week. Have a good week.
Bye.